All right, super scholars, I am going to continue with the next math lesson. I fiddled around with some YouTube. I fiddled around with some other stuff with our lesson 89 upload. And so hopefully this will work even better. But I'm going to continue with the next lesson that was in your packet. This would be the first page that was attached to the actual packet to be doing on Wednesday because we thought this would be the first day that we would be home from school. So lesson 90, the objective is multiply two two-digit numbers with regrouping. And this is almost word for word an objective we had last week. We multiplied two two-digit numbers. The only difference is now we are adding in that step of regrouping. So we, again, are combining concepts that you already know how to do. So multiplying two two-digit numbers, and you know how to regroup. Now we are going to be combining those and seeing what happens when we need to regroup with two two-digit multiplication numbers. We've done regrouping with just two-digit times one-digit multiplication. So that goes along with, again, the first one on your packet. But I am going to ignore some of the instructions at the top of this worksheet. And you're reading along with it while you're looking at the video, you will know exactly what I'm going to tell you to cross off. So the instructions on the worksheet say, when multiplying two two-digit numbers, step one, after you've done the first digit, indent the second line and use a 0 as a placeholder. And on your worksheet, they made a grid to help you line things up because some of you do. You start moving over each column, and then eventually when it gets time to add them at the end, sometimes then you're not lined up properly. So they have the grid on the worksheet, and they're putting a 0 as a placeholder. Yes, do step one. Step two, use mental math to carry unless the carried number is more than 5. No, cross that off. When we are just starting out with two two-digit multiplication and it's our first time regrouping that, I don't even trust myself enough to remember what number I carried over. Always write down the number that you are carrying over, whether it's 1 or it's 9. It doesn't matter if it's more or less than 5. Always write that number down so you don't forget it, because what's too easy to do is you get going, and then all of a sudden when it's time for you to add that in, you forgot that you carried it over, especially if we are using larger numbers to multiply and they're not facts that you have memorized. So like if I'm doing 2 times 3 and I know that that's 6, that's not a good example because I'm going to have to carry that one over. But if I'm doing a number that I have to carry over and it's a math fact that I don't have memorized, then I'm probably going to have to use other tools like my number rolls or like my multiplication chart. And by then, I might have forgotten that in my head, I remembered I carried over a 4, and I might forget to add that in. So do not do step number 2. You're going to go to step number 3. It says if the carried number is more than 5, write it down. You are going to write it down whether it's more or less than 5. And this says part 2 because it's a continuation of that two two-digit multiplication lesson from last week. The only difference is we're adding in regrouping today. So we're going to do a couple of examples. I'll do at least 2 on the whiteboard. And again, if you have questions, you can put them in the comments. And if you're still super duper stuck, then you can either come in during one of the office hour times that I have set up at school, or you can sign up to schedule a video conference to go over things. So I'm going to use an example. We'll go with that first one on the worksheet because I already started talking about it and then I made a mistake. So I don't want you to be confused doing number 1. So I'm going to write on my whiteboard 37 times 29. And see, I was looking at number 2 because everything's backwards when I'm looking at it on the screen. So that's not even the one I used as an example. So completely ignore what I was saying about that regrouping. This one is a good example for that. So I'm going to start in with the number in is this backwards? No, it's not. This is really difficult to be teaching this. So I'm going to start out with the number in my ones column, 9 times 7. 9 times 7, I know because I've memorized my facts, is 63. If you did not know that 9 times 7 was 63, you might have to use some other tools, and then you might forget if you were supposed to carry a number over. I know it's 63. In the number 63, 3 is in my ones column, so I'm going to write it in my ones column. 6 is in the tens place. So I'm going to carry it over and write it down on top of the tens place. Now I'm done with my ones place. I'm going to multiply 9 by my number in my tens place. So now I am doing 9 times 3. 9 times 3 is 27. And see, if you didn't know 9 times 3 was 27 and that wasn't something you had memorized, by the time you used your tools and you figured out 9 times 3 is 27, you might forget that you were supposed to have a 6 up here if you did not write it down. So write down your regrouping. And if any parents are listening along, regrouping is a fancy name for carrying or borrowing. That was something I had to learn when I started teaching third grade math, because it was just carrying or borrowing when I was in third grade. Regrouping covers any time that you have to change numbers in your ones place, your tens place, your hundreds place, etc. That means borrowing or carrying. When you're taking or you're adding to any column, you're regrouping. All right, so 9 times 3 is 27. 27 plus 6 is 33. That's not true. Yes, it is. There's a lot of pressure when you're recording yourself. So 333 is my number for 3 times or 9 times 37. I am done with my ones column. So I'm going to cross off the number in my ones column, and right away I'm going to put a 0 as a placeholder in the ones column underneath. So I don't forget to accidentally start writing down my tens column numbers in the ones column. So I'm going to put a 0 there as a placeholder. And then I'm also going to cross off the number that I carried over, because I don't want to accidentally add the wrong number in if I have to regroup when I do my tens column. So I'm done with the ones column. I'm moving over to the tens column. Now it is 2 times 7. I'm multiplying my tens column number by my ones column number. 2 times 7 is 14. And I'm in my tens column, so technically it's 140. So I'm going to put a 4 in my tens column. I'm going to carry a 1 over to the tens column from where I'm multiplying. Now I'm going to do my tens column times my tens column. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then I add in that number I carried. 6 plus 1 is 7. And now I need to add the product from when I multiplied my ones column to the product from when I multiplied my tens column. So 3 plus 0 is 3. 3 plus 4 is 7. 3 plus 10 or 3 plus 7 is 10. I don't need to regroup because there's no other column. I'm just going to write down the 10. Now I'm in my thousands, so I'm going to add my comma. So 37 times 29 equals 1,073. And because I started reading things backwards on the screen, I'm going to go over number 2 as well. So number 2 on your worksheet is 53 times 41. I love when I have a 1 in any of my columns. I love it when I have a 0 too, because I can use that 0 property and I don't really have to be thinking about things as hard in my head. So I know, because of identity property, 1 times any number is the other number. So my ones column has a 1. 1 times 53 is going to be 53. I'm going to write down 53 right away. Then I'm done with my ones column. Identity property made that super quick. I'm going to cross off that 1. I'm going to put a 0 as a placeholder in my ones column. And if you are one of my students that starts writing things off to the side or starts moving that way while you're writing your numbers, maybe you want to draw out the grids like the worksheet did to help you line things up. That's totally fine. Whatever helps you remember which numbers you are adding when. Now I'm in my tens column. I've got my 0 for my placeholder. Now I'm multiplying 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. I'm going to put a 2 down here in my tens column and carry a 1 over here in my tens column. Now I'm done with that number in the ones column of the 53. Now I'm doing 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20, plus that 1 that I carried over is 21. I'm going to write down 21. So now I have 53 plus 2,120, and then I'm going to start adding right to left, starting with my ones column. 3 plus 0 is 3. 5 plus 2 is 7. 1, and then there's no other number above that, so it's 1 plus 0 is 1. 2. I'm going to get rid of those numbers or those lines I wrote to help me line things up evenly. Add in my comma because I'm in the thousands now. So 53 times 41 equals 2,173. So you have 4 more problems on that worksheet that I didn't go through. However, you do them the same exact way. You line them up. You start with your ones column. When you are done multiplying both digits in your top number, both the ones place and the tens place, by your ones column number on the bottom, you add that 0 as a placeholder, and you move on to your tens column, then you add them together. So if you need to go back and rewatch the steps that we did for number 1 and number 2, you can do that. Try 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you feel stuck, add a question to the comments or sign up for a time to schedule a video conference or come in during office hours when I will be at school. Otherwise, good luck. There will be another video this afternoon with the next chapter from the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basley Frankweiler and a devotion later this afternoon. Lesson 91 will be uploaded tomorrow for Math Help.